The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of its host, guests, and callers that are not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Welcome to the STARS program, Seniors Taking Active Roles in Society, with your host, Anita Finley. Your comments and questions are welcome during today's broadcast. Call us toll-free at 888-721-0074. That's 888-721-0074. And now, here's your host, Anita Finley.
Okay, well, we're going to keep going with authors. It seems like this morning we have such excellent authors, and now calling in from Massachusetts, we're going to be talking with Brenda Sue, who wrote a couple of books which we featured, of course, in Boomer Times, and she's got some new things she wants to tell us about. But first, let me remind you, one of the books, of course, was Beyond Murder, and it was Web of Deceit. And good morning, Brenda Sue.
Good morning, Anita. How are you?
I'm great. I have a question for you. Brenda Sue, do you have a last name? You know, we always do everything with Brenda Sue. Is that?
Well, let me tell you something. That is my last name, S-U-E. I'm an artist, and I used to teach art for many years. And as a result, I always sign my paintings Brenda Sue. And I'm an electrologist by profession, and I owned a very large day spa. And when I was a young girl, everyone would say to me, do you have a last name? I said, well, everyone knows me as Brenda Sue. And as I got older, I said, you know what? I'm going to change my name because it's just as easy to know me as Brenda Sue. And that's why I did it. So that is my legal name, Brenda Sue.
Okay. It's funny when I first met you, I haven't met you personally, but I've been talking with you, and I said, well, she's coined this Brenda Sue. That's her name. But okay, I got that straight. Thank you very much. Well, we're talking to Brenda Sue about a lot of things, and even though she is working on her next book, which we were going to be featuring in our December issue, I want to go back to something that I had not read of your books, Jack and Jill. That sounds like a fantastic story.
Well, I've written a non-fiction trilogy. And actually a fiction trilogy and I enjoy doing murder, mystery, suspense thrillers with the romance and family drama and estrangements. And everyone that has family knows that there are always family dramas and estrangements. But Jack and Jill is my first nonfiction book that I wrote, and they called me, Frank and Tina Muka, and they said, would you be interested in doing a nonfiction book? And I never tried one before. My boyfriend Harvey always writes nonfiction. He's not a fiction writer. And I said, you know what? Let me give it a try. I do it in a very different way because I do it with humor also. It's a very sad story, and as one of my clients put it, it's a bittersweet story. It has 130 pages, and it has 12 photographs. All these photographs are very, they're all realistic, and they're about Tina and Frank and how she has emerged over the years. It shows her when she was a young boy. But what happens is, this is really sad, and it's, what is it like to be born feeling that you're in the wrong body? And nowadays, people are saying more about how they're feeling and expressing their feelings more, and talking about unusual gender relationships. But years ago, they didn't have a way of doing this. So in Jack and Jill, Not an Easy Climb, it's a rich account of the lonely life of Tina Muka. Tina was born the third son to a French-Canadian-American family in Keene, New Hampshire. And she was born on December 24th, 1943. So she was with Renee Richards and the very emerging people that started this. And for years, Tina was born Neil Trudell, and Neil always felt out of place in his own body. He was depressed, he had many learning disabilities, but most of all was that he was subjected to 19 shock therapy treatments for depression. As a result, he lost his memory, but unfortunately not the one crucial event in his life. And he didn't forget the loss of his young father and the struggle to survive a violent death. And Neil was always looked upon as an outcast, especially in those days. He was a third son, and it was expected of him to just go along and do the baseball and do all the boy, quote, sports and like all those trucks and everything. He hated it. He would rather play ball. And if you ever saw Tina today, truthfully, she looks as if she never was anything else but a woman. She's a very pretty woman. Are you still there, Anita?
Oh, yeah. I'm listening very intently, letting you go on.
Okay. His male parts were very small, and he started developing breasts at age 9.5, 10. And he's Catholic, and he was a very religious boy. And he often thought of going, and he did try to become an altar boy. But he was born, as I said, with a lot of disabilities. Deafness was part of it. And he had a very hard time, and he was also dyslexic. So, and we didn't know years ago what dyslexia was. And years ago, he just went into church and wanted to do this, but he felt very bad because he couldn't become the type of altar boy that he really wanted to be. But there is nothing held back. And you read in this book about his gay encounters with the gay life, the transvestites, and close friends that were like herself in many ways. And it's portrayed very vividly with nothing held back.
Brenda Sue, let me ask you, Brenda Sue, let me ask you some questions now that I've been listening to this. So he was Catholic. Did he tell the priest, do you think, about this?
No. That's when he was a young boy. As a matter of fact, he never told anyone, except when he was admitted finally to mental institutions because of his depression. Mm. But he never would tell anyone. He used to play act at home. And he loved the movies, and he would go to the movies and stay there for hours. And when he got older, he merged and wanted to get an apartment for himself so he could dress and act like the woman that he really felt he was.
And what did he do? What did he do as a profession?
Well, with learning disabilities, it was very difficult. He was in the hospital, and he worked as an orderly, which is really funny. I made that very, very funny. Some of the things that he had to do, and they taught him to do, but he loves helping people. He's very, and as a matter, I shouldn't do it as he, because Tina emerged as a woman. And when she was born, of course, as I said, it was Neil, but she wanted to be a woman. And she has become that. She had the surgery. She never needed hormones. When she went into the sex doctor in New York City for sex therapy, the doctor said, "What hormones are you on?" And she said, "I'm not on any." And she had a size B going into a C bosom. And she was so embarrassed going into gymnastic classes, because in those days you had a shower, and it's just like any other thing. And she didn't want the boys to make fun of her by seeing the small body parts that he was born with, and yet here he was developing breasts. It was very tragic, and it was a very hard life to live, because in actuality, he was living two lives. His mother loved dancing, and he and his brother went to dancing school, and he just thought this was great, because he could wear the sequins and all those fancy clothes and everything. And he would entertain for people on the street corners. If his brother wasn't there, he was meeting his brother there. And they went to dance classes for many years. And I knew the class, that the particular school that he went to was very well known around this area. Because, don't forget, all of this, even Jack and Jill, Web of Deceit, Beyond Murder, all of it is part of metamorphosis, how you change and how a person changes their lifestyle.
It's interesting to hear you, though, because this is your first nonfiction book. Your other books are fiction, Web of Deceit, correct, and Beyond Murder.
Right, correct.
But this is nonfiction. And was this your first one? The first book you ever wrote?
No, this is my third book.
Oh, so
I wrote this at the same time that I was writing Beyond Murder. I happen to have an affliction of ADD, but I'm fortunate that I can write two books at once, but I finish. A lot of ADD people, have a lot of different things going on, but they never finish what they do. I finish. And I'm having the trilogy finished for the third book in this fiction novels. Yeah, it's going to be Web of Deceit, Beyond Murder, and then Vacation of a Lifetime.
Right. Great.
And what's very interesting is that I always put various themes into the books. I make sure that, like with Web of Deceit, it was about white-collar crime and drugs and abusive situations. Of course, it's always romances, family dramas, because if you come from a family, you know that there's always, no family is perfect. I don't care what you say. And there's always family dramas and estrangements. So, but it's very interesting. And you can get my books so many different ways, which I'm looking into getting the audio now for people, because that's very good. But they can also get it on the tablets and go to the stores. And I think I had you had my postcards at your fair. You had a book fair recently.
Oh,
correct?
Yeah, we did.
And but it's easy to get to my page, my webpage, and if you want me to, it's www.metamorphosisnovels.com. It's a long name, and but it's the only name that I know that it's so much like the books themselves, and that's spelled METAMORPHS novels, NOVELS.com. And the reader, unless the iPad is the only computer that it won't work on, but other than that, they can read the first chapters of those books and see if they like it. And I'm sure that most readers do like it. I have had excellent reviews from people, and one man that finished reading it said he couldn't believe it. It was like bittersweet. He enjoyed it, and yet it was so enthralling. And a lot of families have people within their families, that are of a different gender, and now it's coming out, and it's not treated in the same way as it was years ago.
This is
especially in the workforce.
Right, and I, of course, remember there have been some cases, and there was a woman, Christine, let's say a few things. A man was a tennis player, famous tennis player.
Yes, Christine Jorgensen.
Exactly. And that was like a freak thing. But now, as you're saying, it is more common. We just don't hear. And sometimes I do recall one specific time when my husband and I went to New Orleans, and there was a nightclub we went to, and there were gorgeous women, and we went in not knowing anything, that there was beautiful women, who were told afterwards that a lot of these women, of course, they're transsexuals, right? They weren't quite, maybe they wanted to be, they were beautiful women even though they were men, but many of them probably felt exactly, as your star here. Now, it's
yes.
and you had, you were in the spa business, and you lived a pretty fancy life, and of course, then you lost a lot of your business and all, but you always took this. You took your circumstances and you changed.
But like I said, I had it all. I had the large spa. I had a 14-room mansion with an in-law apartment and an in-ground pool, and I got sick. For a year and a half, I had heavy IV meds going to my heart. But through it all, even though I lost my house, I lost my business, but the worst thing claiming bankruptcy. That was just really devastating. But you know what? I've always been a positive person. I wake up in the morning smiling. I really do. And I thank you, God, for waking up and giving me another day. And I'm now on a speaking tour. I go to speak, different companies and churches. And I really believe that a person has to be able to look at themselves in the mirror and see the reflection looking back and liking that person. And if they like that person and like what occupation they're in, makes quite a difference. Because no matter what you do, you can be a dishwasher, you can be a nanny, you can be anything. And you can be an executive in a corporation. You have to like that business. And if you do, then you automatically become a wonderful, wonderful person in that particular occupation.
Well, Brenda Sue, I have to, though, say that from all the life you've lived, writing is, I know, a passion for you now. And I don't think that you went through any literature courses when you were in college. This is something very...
I did.
Oh, you did?
It's really fun. Well, it's funny. My boyfriend, Harvey, and he was my first boyfriend I ever had from age 12 and a half to 16. And we're still with each other. And there was a little gap there, but we met each other again. But I used to skip my high school classes, and he was almost 4 years older than I was. And he was going to Boston University for journalism. And as far as I know, and I think, he is about really one of the best writers I've ever come across. And that's not being prejudiced either. He writes in the first draft. Me, I'm known as Brenda Sue Rewrite because I'm always rewriting my things. But I would skip my classes and go to his journalism and creative writing classes. And we both are only children, and I really found it easier to express myself when writing. I do it in a way that is very, very funny. And I think that that's important to have levity. Even if a situation is hard and you can talk about it, but if you can do it and laugh at yourself and laugh at what's happening in the world. I've always lived by the motto, treat others as you want them to treat you. And if you go someplace and you go into, like, say, for instance, a supermarket, and you don't know anyone, or you're shopping somewhere, or you're on the street, and you don't know that person, you just smile at them. Most of the time, they'll smile back at you. But I'm telling you, others are just, as in Yiddish we call verkrummtes, which means that these people are not nice people. They look at you like, is that woman nuts or something? But I was born in a Yiddish household, and by that I mean English was not really my first language. And I can understand Yiddish as people Portuguese descent and Italian descent and French Canadians with the A's. It's all what you're used to. But if I have a client being an esthetician and an electrologist, and they're from a different country, I can revert back and start speaking like they do, because what happens is my English, the noun comes last.
Well, I have to tell you, Brenda Sue, that our time is up, and I always like talking to you because, you do go from all these topics, and you're doing some great things, and I know we're really anticipating your next book coming up, which we will be featuring in December, and you're just a charming woman. You're such a charming woman.
Thank you so much.
The vacation of a lifetime. We're going to look.
Being on your show.
Thank you. We're going to look for.
Thank you.
We're going to look for a vacation of a lifetime when you do it, and I know that.
So New Age. Well, it's interesting because it's about New Age pirates, and a subject, unfortunately, that comes about in practically every family, and that's cancer.
Well, we can't have any more time to talk about that, but we do thank you. We look forward to another conversation with you towards the end of the year.
Thank you so much. And they can look it up again at www.metamorphosisnovels.com and Brenda Sue. And I look forward to hearing from you again also.
We will, Brenda Sue.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
All right. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you, dear.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. We'll be back right after, we're going to come back right now. We're going to be listening to Mark Underwood as he talks about this marvelous supplement called Prevagen for people who want a better memory.